to the 40K Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40K with your hosts Vic Vijay and David Gaylard.
All right, we are back. Take it off, Vic.
Yeah, amazing. Welcome back, everyone, to episode 64 of 40K Fireside. It is awesome to have you all with us for this one. We've seen a lot going on with 40K over the last few weeks. There's been a lot of updates.
Has stuff been changing?
This has been a massive release cycle. Actually, it's been really interesting to follow a whole set of detachments for every faction, and of course, we had a really big balanced slate and update to the points.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on, Dave.
Yeah, I think this was one of the coolest things I've seen Games Workshop do in terms of like release schedules, you know, since maybe I think I've started playing, I guess, right? Because we've always been in that kind of codex, you know, codex to codex kind of release thing, right? But yeah, for this month, it seems like everyone gets a little bit of something. You know, I think December's a little bit of a downtime month as well, right? People usually chilling out. They're going on holiday. They've got family over. Warhammer's kind of like fallen down the priority list. So it's a really smart way of keeping people engaged, I think, as well. And a good way to give codexes that haven't come out yet a new detachment, you know, a reason to get people excited. So yeah, knocked it out the park on this one, as far as I'm concerned. Good on them.
You know, I was reflecting on this a little bit, and it's kind of interesting because anything like this, where they do little changes all over the place, I normally get kind of scared that the balance is going to be really messy. And it hasn't been perfect. But it's not been too bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're only halfway there.
There's still time.
There's still time. Yeah, oh man, there's so much to cover on this one. I think there's two sides of the camp here on this as well, in terms of the uniqueness of what's been released. I think in some regards, some factions have had really unique design. But what I would say is I think there is a little bit too much copy and paste of the stratagems, I think. And particularly the stratagems, I think. Because it feels like you read a lot of these detachments and you think, oh yeah, they get the fallback and charge stratagem. They get the fallback and shoot stratagem. They get the reactive move stratagem. Or they get the whatever, right? And those have kind of like lost a lot of their flair now, I think. And a lot of them do just seem straight up copy and paste. Like, this unit is eligible to advance and shoot, 1 CP. Okay, this unit's -1 to hit, 1 CP, you know? So I think the stratagem is a bit copy and paste, but the detachment rules have been a little... I've actually been surprised at how far they've pushed some of the detachment rules and the uniqueness. Like the Ork one today, I thought was really cool. That was awesome, right?
Yeah, the Drukhari one as well.
The Drukhari one, really cool as well.
Creative.
Yeah, so... I mean, then you've the flip side to that is, of course, we've had the Necrons one, which is a almost literal copy and paste from this
almost the same detachment rule as the Eldar one. So let's not look past that.
Yeah. So, but you know, I guess we can't expect them to knock it out of the park on every single one. I'm sure if you and I designed it, we probably wouldn't come to the same knocking it of the park on every single one as well, right? But,
this is quite a clever use of the 10th edition detachments. Comparing it to 9th, 8th, every other edition of the game, codexes have had a massive suite of kind of rules, and then you pick your detachment rule, and that's all. 10th has simplified everything to a much smaller set of rules, but each detachment has an entirely unique set of rules. So I think this is a clever way of using that system, albeit that they've gone a little boring with the fact that a lot of the stratagems are copy and paste.
Yeah.
Dave, we could do a tier list on stratagem archetypes.
That's a good idea, actually.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I think there'll be a correlation between, the stronger armies and the amount of higher tiered archetype stratagems that they have.
Fair enough.
And we might see a little bit of that in this tier list as well.
We should do it. We should do a 9th edition tier list as well. Like, look at some of the best strats from 9th edition as well, I think. Actually, I don't know if the stratagems were as good in 9th edition, you know? But they're certainly pretty hot in 10th edition. Like, if, Phantasm obviously like comes to mind, right?
Yeah,
is that the most powerful stratagem ever printed?
The original, where it was a flat 6 move.
Flat 6.
Which you could use on anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty good ability.
Good times.
But, I always kind of miss some of the stratagems like Vicious Traps, the really situational ones, But you're right. You do get more detachment nuance now, which is, or uniqueness, which is cool. So, yeah, it's interesting thoughts. I mean, let us know what you think down below as well. Do you prefer... do you prefer more detachments with more flavor within them, but with a smaller suite of abilities, or do you prefer like the ninth edition ones where you had all the strats, and then the detachment that you were playing is a little bit less impactful, so to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, tons of stuff has been changing. I have been in the Moroccan Atlas Mountains for the last 4 days, so I've been a little bit out of the picture. But I've had at the same time, we had a couple of days to consolidate our thoughts and stuff like that, and give you guys a bit more of a refined look on how we are looking at things at the moment, and what some of the big movers were, the winners
Mhm.
and losers. Because I think almost everything, bar a couple of armies, have had some pretty significant changes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I also really like this particular one because I feel like this time we've had a lot more discussion with the Ignite team. And it's
Yep.
kind of a lot of these thoughts are a combination of people playing across a number of different factions because everyone's got involved with each detachment that's come out. So
Oh
this will be a little bit of an amalgamation of all of our thoughts here.
yeah. Even I've managed to get a couple of games in with some of the new detachments, so it was
Yeah, yeah,
been quite fun. Yeah, awesome.
nice.
Well, why don't we kick it off? So we're just going to go straight into where we think the army is, I guess, right? Um,
Yeah, well, we put them in an order that we feel is interesting, with like interesting changes
mhm.
towards less interesting things for us. I'm sorry, is that Chaos Knights at the bottom? Is that? I'm
That
sorry.
is chaos. Knights at the bottom. I think World
um,
Eaters had one change as well. Sorry, guys.
so I would consider if there was a scale of calm, reasonable takes. I feel like Stat Check would be amazing on this. If you listen
Mhm.
to Innes, no matter how crazy something is, he will make it sound like everything's going to be all right. I'm going to tell you how to deal with this, guys. This is how it works. On Fireside, we do things a little more fiery, and and we say it how it is because this first
Oh,
army
oh,
is the Adepta
bro,
Sororitas,
you should,
Sisters
you
of
should,
Battle.
I've had my rant so many times, but like, I feel like you deserve your rant here, man, because these guys got done bad.
They got done so badly. Um, Sisters have like progressively over time probably become the army that I play the most competitively
Mhm.
across the last three editions. I've had the most success with them, and I've played them across a lot of different rule sets.
Mhm.
Sisters have up to this point been a very interesting army that always rewards player skill.
Mhm.
And we saw a little bit of a dip in that with the Codex coming out and the Bringers of Flame vehicle heavy skew being such an accessible, easy to play army that it
Mhm.
became very popular. It kind of became a big part of the meta in a negative way because
Mm.
it's not fun to play against a vehicle skew like that with high output, high maneuverability, and also the miracle dice mechanic feeling so oppressive to play against.
Yeah.
People just don't enjoy playing that.
Mhm.
Now, with armies like this that are a little more technical, Eldar, T-Sons, Sisters, things that have other resources that you manage, it can feel like they can do everything, which means it feels kind of unfair to play against.
Mm.
But it feels much more unfair if you don't play Sisters or Eldar or T-Sons. When you actually play the army, you're like, oh man, I can't do everything here. If my
Yep.
opponent just does this, I've got nothing I can do about it.
Yep.
Um, but that means that I feel like these armies maybe get balanced a little more aggressively when they get out
Mm.
of hand because the community hates these armies when they're too good.
Mhm.
Sisters has fallen a little bit into this, in my opinion.
Mhm.
They came out of the gates extremely strong and took a very early big points increase to what was in their codex.
And this
So
was
they,
pre WTC, so this patch was in place for
mm,
WTC effectively, right?
yeah,
Yeah, because
massive.
because I think justifiably so as well, right? Because
Oh,
the
100%.
detachment rule was outrageous given the current points, right?
Mhm. Yeah, if we look at the transition from the index to the codex, the index was left in a strong position
Mm.
because the data sheets were relatively weak in the
Mm.
index, but Miracle Dice propped everything up.
Yeah.
The codex made Miracle Dice even stronger because the Triumph gave you access to sixes. That the sixes are the absolute key thing,
Mm.
and you get more high quality Miracle Dice across the game because of the other rules that are involved, including the enhancements and the banner.
Mm.
Um, so they kind of accentuated the problem by giving you better Miracle Dice and better data sheets that do more damage.
Mhm.
That pushes Sisters over the top. They're no longer an army where it's cheap rubbish stuff that you use Miracle Dice to make sure you can do everything. Now
Mm.
it's an army that actually hits hard and
Yep.
has Miracle Dice so it can't be killed and can kill anything it
Mhm.
wants. So immediately, a big nerf to the points, much better. But
And I remember
still,
actually the
mm,
penitent host was a huge part of that too, right? Because Repentia were at
mm.
the original price, and everyone was really. I know I was really worried about that. I was like, wow, if Repentia and Arcoflagellants and stuff get printed at this current points cost, it's going to be redonkulous as well.
Yeah, it just looked a bit ridiculous
Mm,
all around. And actually, interestingly, I don't think the points were nerfed enough
mm,
because they weren't able to change rules.
mm,
So the points went up, but the rules still stayed all the same. And we
mhm.
still had Bringers of Flame at an extremely strong level around WTC time and after
Yep,
that, until we got another balance update. So the last balance update put the points up extremely high
yep.
on a lot of units. We got increases to the Castigator, Seraphim, the Triumph,
Triumph.
and the army became a much more expensive army where you have a
Yep.
lot less stuff. So
I think
now,
we had sisters in low A tier, right?
right at the bottom of eight, I think
Yeah.
one up from
We,
the bottom of
you
eight
and I
here.
both didn't rate them too highly, especially in the meta that was existent back then as well.
Yeah, our last singles tier list, I actually personally wanted to put them in B tier. Well,
Yeah,
we
I
were
could
kind
see
of
that.
having that discussion during the
Yeah.
video because, and we're going to see that a lot in this tier list. You can have so much output on all of these vehicles and all of this stuff, but that doesn't win you games in Pariah Nexus.
No.
You need a combination of output and scoring.
In fact, I watched you play that stream game against was it Chaos Knights, I think.
Hmm.
And if there's a turn there where if you have a whiff turn and
Hmm.
like stuff doesn't go your way, you're kind of in the deep end like
Hmm.
immediately. All of a sudden you're actually losing that game massively if they spike on like one of their knights for one good rolls or again a couple of sequences of good rolls, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, their output wasn't anywhere near as high as a lot of people thought as well.
Now, the story continues with Sisters because after they got this balance update, I think a lot of the community and a lot of other content creators still believed Sisters were one of the strongest armies in the game, if not
Wild.
right up there in S tier.
Yeah, crazy.
And that didn't actually translate into reality over time. So as the weeks went by, we saw Sisters top players. Sisters always has a player base of very good players playing in them,
Hmm.
struggling to do well at tournaments,
Hmm.
losing early rounds, win percentage going down, and tournament wins going down.
Yep. And
Um,
Aquilons were also then printed as well, which was an almost hard counter to the army on top of that.
Yeah, so Sisters ended up around the kind of 47 to 50% win rate. They're in a fine place.
Mm,
You could leave them there. Ideally, quality of life would be to tone down some of the rules and decrease some of the points on the melee units so that they have other options.
mm,
Sisters is much better suited to being a cheap, chaffy kind of army
mhm,
with lots of little melee pieces and a little bit of shooting support
mm.
than it is being a vehicle spam shooting army only.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this balance update it did one part to that. It toned down miracle dice quite significantly,
Mhm.
both in generation and your ability to use them. But what it didn't do is give any other kind of compensatory buffs.
Yep.
So
And
this
and
is a
actually, we see that quite often. Actually, is that there is a lot of the times, and I think God has this aspects to it as well. Is that you'll only see negative nerfs to an army, right? You won't see like they don't. I feel like sometimes they don't really take a holistic view on many of these armies. They don't go, well, I've nerfed this part of the army. Maybe I should increase this other part where it kind of lacks a little bit,
Hmm.
even if not to make it a bit more seasonal in terms of what it can and can't field, so to speak, right?
This one's a little bit of an anomaly, though, because normally what they do is for the armies that have become too strong, really high win percentage, they
Mm,
only do nerfs on
mm,
them. And then the armies that sit in the middle or a little bit lower, if they want to tweak them, they usually give them something in return. Like there
mhm.
was a point where Guard were kind of getting nerfs on Kazakin, but getting buffs on
Yeah,
Scions.
yeah.
Getting
The
nerfs
last, yeah,
on Manticores, but I think getting buffs on Bulgrin or something, right?
yeah. I think particularly the
That was,
last one. The last one they did
yeah.
really well. When they did, they actually brought down a couple of points on some things. Like Ogren is a good
Mhm.
example, right? Okay, cool. That's really good. Now you can field those. So that was a good example of that. But I think
Uh,
usually it's just a top-down like haircut approach. I think in my experience.
We've seen it a lot with Necrons. They've been
Yeah.
strong and getting toned down a little bit, but getting something else.
Yes. Yeah. Great
And
example.
that
Yeah.
Sisters are an army that needed to lose something but gain something else. They
Mm,
didn't. They just took another hit, and it wasn't a small hit. It was a massive hit to them
mm,
because they also got points increases.
mm.
The Castigator, Exorcist, fair enough. No, we want the Exorcist dead, but the
Sure.
Castigator goes up. they get their miracle dice nerfed to the ground, and now you're left with a very bad situation for sisters, where I think a lot of top players will drop off them. They'll move to other technical armies, and you'll get the diehard people maybe even taking breaks or just not really getting any success with sisters at this stage. They don't have enough stuff put on the board while still doing enough damage
Yep.
to be able to really compete. And in my opinion, I personally think sisters are a C tier army
Yeah,
at this stage.
I'm happy to put them in C2. I mean, we're going to look at a lot of other armies that we're going to go through, and namely some of them are going to be fielding a lot of stuff, and a lot of these armies, even the knight variants, for example, have gone down in points again. And can you imagine sisters? Are you going to be able to beat Chaos Knights reliably? Well, probably not, right?
Yeah, it's
It's a tough
dicey.
one. There we go.
But I will probably do a little bit of a deep dive into this. I've already done a couple of videos on the member side.
Yeah.
I still have a little bit of hope with the Hallowed Martyrs build
Yeah, nice.
and just a pure scoring build.
Mm-hmm.
They're still able to generate some miracle dice because of their enhancements. So, there's still probably some play with a Hallowed Martyrs build that is just aiming for a small win in singles,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not consistent, and you're really playing uphill. So, C tier it is.
Oof, the fabled quadruple nerf.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
in
a
the
brutal
ground.
one. It's going to take them a long time to recover from that one, I think.
Yeah, it's a hard one to recover from because I think they
Yeah.
lost a lot of sympathy during this process.
Yeah.
Exorcist not getting nerfed, while everything else got nerfed in the last update, did not do Sisters any favors.
Yeah, and it's always a tough one to balance between that like perception and actual reality of playing it, right? Like
Mm,
there's so many factors that go into, and from an outsider's perspective, there's so many factors that go into why, like trying to understand why they would make a certain decision. Is it because of the public perception? Is it because of the play experience for new players? Is it because the win rate is too high? Is win rate the only statistic they use,
true.
et cetera, right? And
Mm,
even these days, I really struggle to come to a conclusion. We had we had the episode where Guard got nerfed and Conoptic Court got nerfed, and if you haven't seen that, you'll find out my opinions on that particular point. And after that, I've just kind of gone, okay, look, it is what it is, right? Like I've almost given up trying to understand how things change or something like that. But yeah, I mean, having said that though, there are definitely some changes I agree with. This balance place for sure, and a lot of them rest in Guard as well. So positive changes there. Alrighty. Sisters. Alrighty. Should we go into Admech?
yeah,
Something
you've had to
that
play around, haven't you, with this?
yeah, I've so those who don't know, because it was after we started the podcast, Admech was one of my original armies that I got into. So I was playing the double Stratoraptor, double Fusilier bomber shenanigans, right? But I was also playing at the time like a bunch of weird stuff. Like I've always tried to try out new things on the list, and so I haven't really picked them up in 10th edition, and I haven't even played Skitarii Hunter Cohort because I just thought, well, I've got so much going on, investing into that, and I'm already playing Guard. But the Halo mechanic really interested me. I thought this is a cool time to get back into the army and see what it's like. So they had the Halo detachment, and I think people have kind of settled that it's just as good as Skitarii Hunter Cohort. So that's kind of the early indications, especially for me as well. It really enables some units here, like Rust Stalkers, for example, can go super, super fast and are really reliable. You can play with breaches. You can play with maybe even robots. The Scorpius Disintegrators are really powerful there. So I think they're in a really good spot right now. They're definitely an A tier army, I think, at the moment. And they've got a
Yeah.
couple of different builds you can do. Me personally, I'm a fan of like 1 to 2 Scorpius Disintegrators. Sorry, 2 to 3 maybe. I wasn't a big fan of the Las chickens, even though I have like 8 of them painted as well, because I found them a little bit too unreliable. But I think nowadays the Scorpius Disintegrator is really key because it gets +1 to hit versus vehicles and monsters. Then it sits there on that 2-up save, and what you can do is you can put it in the Stealth Halo, so it gets -1 to hit and cover. So actually, that 2-up save, it's kind of like a Lehman Russ, go figure, right? But you can play 1 or 2 of those, and if you play 2 of them and have one in outflank, you can play both of them on both sides, make them both stealth, and then you're sitting basically on a 1-up effectively and -1 to hit Lehman Russ. So a pre-smoked Lehman Russ is pretty hard to shift these days, actually. And with the +1 to hit against vehicles and monsters, you're hitting on oftentimes 2s reliably. And some of the profiles line up really well. Like the Pheromote, just flat 3 shots, nice. The rocket, the Daedalus missile, is also strength 9, so that lines up quite well against Necron Doomsday arcs there as well, because it just has that great, strength versus toughness breakpoint, D6 damage, and Doomsday really just kind of struggle to kill it back as well. So really like that. I'm a big fan. I'm almost a fan of almost playing no characters at all, actually, this detachment. And you just kind of play, I like 30 Ruststalkers, for example, a couple of Dune Riders, and then you got your Vanguard and Rangers, amounts and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think this is if you're looking at getting back into AdMech, I think it's a really good time. If you're like me, maybe, and you found the Skitarii Hunter cohort like a little bit too high of a barrier to entry to understand and get playing, then I think the Halo one is a bit more straightforward, and it can kind of offer you a little bit less administrative work to get going as well there. So I really, really like them. I think they're really strong at the moment. I think they're definitely undervalued, and they're one of these codexes that does actually have quite a bit of depth in list building to build around what is coming into the meta right now. So if you think Necrons are going to be really popular, like you've got answers there. You could even play the auto chickens that are really good against Doomsday Arcs, for example. So yeah, lots of options, and they really play Warhammer really well. It's quite similar to Guard in a lot of ways. You got infantry units, you've got more combat in Guard for sure, but you've got transports that are really powerful, and you've got shooting back ends like with Scorpiuses, for example, as well.
Yeah,
So
the comparison to God is so interesting. Actually,
yeah,
it's only just clicked for
yeah,
me.
it's very similar, yeah. Because you got the
It's
Dune Riders, and
yeah.
you can even pregame moon with the Dune Rider if you put Skitarii ranges of them. So
I think if you gave God a trading melee piece like Rustalkers, that's exactly the thing they're missing. Yeah,
yeah,
Admech is a perfect kind of army in that
yeah,
sense.
yeah. I mean, God has them, but they're mounted, so and they hit like wet noodles. So
Hey,
I mean,
God detachment tomorrow could be a Rough Rider
oof,
detachment,
spicy.
mate.
There we go. I'm hoping people won't know this, but I was in Morocco riding a camel the other day, so my team was laughing about that as well. So I think AdMech is an A tier, and obviously we think A tier is going to be quite large, so we'll probably rearrange A tier no matter where we get to after that. Don't worry.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's
AdMech,
yeah.
really cool
Me too.
army at the moment. I think even if you want to play robots, I think you can play robots as well. So
Oh,
they've made them a bit better, and they just got a bit cheaper as well. So
okay.
going for it. And AOC nerf, right, with the balanced data slate, it's
Mm,
good for this army in particular as well. Awesome.
nice.
Speaking of new detachments, the
Yes.
Chaos Space Marines new detachment.
Oh, this is such an interesting one, actually,
Mm.
because this could easily have been such a broken detachment,
Oh,
but actually, it's come out really interesting.
for sure.
CSM and Votann, these two armies may not seem similar to you,
Yeah,
but
that
they
was not the
both,
one I was thinking. I
yeah,
thought you were going to go
but
with.
but there's a point to this. Those two armies both play very much kind of like standard Warhammer 40K.
Mm.
They're gonna put an army out and they're gonna move forward and just do bits and pieces.
Okay.
There's not very many tricks there. The creations of Bile detachment takes that to another level. There is no tricks there. It's a straightforward, I'm gonna MSU trade with you and melee trade with you. But I think it opens up a lot of interesting opportunities here,
Mm.
because I don't think the ideal build with the creations of Bile is completely obvious. It could be, are you going to lean into loads of possessed? Are you going to lean into loads of MSU legionaries? Are you
Mhm.
going to lean into loads of shooting? I've
Mm.
seen someone discuss taking like 6 units of noise marines,
Yeah, why not?
and just putting +1 ballistic skill on the whole army and just shooting.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of very interesting things with CSM that you can do at the moment. Now, I'm not fully sure if Renegade Raiders is better than Creations of Bile. I think both of those detachments are very close
Hmm.
for what CSM are trying to do. And interestingly, I think Packbound is also pretty good for a shooting-based army as well.
Yeah.
So I think CSM are extremely solid. For some reason, there's been a little bit of a drop-off of players, like top players, wanting to play CSM at the moment.
Hmm.
But maybe Creations of Bile will give a bit more incentive for it. Um, One unit that I think might be good in this meta is the unit of 10 Warp Talons. I
Okay.
have a feeling that those
Sell it to me.
guys might come back into play in this meta, where we're hiding from a lot of vehicles that can only shoot directly.
Hmm.
Having single trading pieces that you can reuse is actually quite powerful.
Mm.
So I'm quite keen to see how people experiment with things. But I have a feeling, especially for teams, 10 Warp Talons CSM, either Creations of Bile or Renegade Raiders probably has a good place.
Can you make them hit more reliably in Creations of Bile? Plus
Yeah,
one weapon skill comes to mind, right?
yeah, there's an option for +1 attack weapon skill.
Cool.
So yeah, they can hit a little bit harder there.
Cool. I got a question. Do you think
Mm.
you randomly roll very often, or you think you always pick?
So I think if you have Bile in your list, he lets you do a second one. I think
Ooh.
you randomly roll both of them there
So
if you have him.
Fabius Bile lets you re-roll one dice if you roll
Both
two.
of
Is
the
it?
dice.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
so there's still a risk you hit a duplicate, at which point you only get one of them. You don't get to
Mm.
re-roll duplicates.
Hmm.
But I think that's probably the correct way to do it because pretty much every buff is good.
Yeah. So if you're playing the mid game and you're already stuck in, and you
Mhm,
don't need to close like specifically maybe close gaps, you just
mhm.
roll two, and then like even so, some of these are really good by the way, guys. Like there's situations where like +1 toughness is
Mhm.
literally just -1 to wound.
Yep.
Like really really good.
That's the only situation where +1 toughness is a flat -1 to wound for your army. Let's say
Yep.
you're possessed are going up with toughness and everything becomes -1 to wound on it.
Yep.
That could be a situation where you only go for one, even if you have bile and you pick
Yep.
the one that
Nice.
you want. So
So
yeah,
what do we think for CSM? I mean, CSM been pretty strong, man. I think they've got a little bit more you know, rubber bandage than like Votann, for example, right? They're not like
mhm,
they've got a little bit more reach, right? A little bit more speed and pizzazz than Votann, right?
yeah.
Obliterators, like I remember we were talking about earlier, Obliterators look pretty good in CSM as well, right?
hmm the thing is, we have to remember we have Liam VSL in
Mm.
Ignite, and
Yeah.
he's unbeatable with CSM. Like no one can beat him.
Yes.
It's impossible. But I think they have all the ingredients for being a proper A tier army here.
Hmm.
But I almost would put them exactly equal with AdMech
Okay.
here.
I've got a question.
Uh, mm,
Does the Bile detachment have Armor of Contempt?
no, it
Okay.
doesn't.
Because
Only the
I think
Renegade Raider does.
Renegade Raiders does, right? For sure.
Yeah, but the
And
Bile detachment has a flat -1 to hit as a
ooh,
reactive stratagem. So
that's pretty good.
that's pretty good.
Damn.
That is,
Because
especially with AOC hitting a nerf, you know?
yeah, because I think the AOC nerf is quite big for raiders in particular, right? Like if you've
Mhm,
got a unit of possessed, that
mhm,
you've launched in or whatever like that, and or blitz, right? You're only going to be able to AOC against one of those attacks. So
mhm.
the AOC nerf is definitely an interesting one, and because of that, I could see people moving away from raiders, and whether or not maybe that's had a big impact, right? Because I think the
Yeah.
-1 to hit in Bile is also you can use it in the 5 phase as well, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I'm not fully sure.
maybe correct me
Um,
down below if that's the
Uh,
case.
yeah, I think replacing your shooting vehicles in that you normally take in Renegade Raiders with
Hmm.
obliterators in
Yeah.
Creations of Bile is quite an interesting transition there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth experimenting, but I have a feeling it's going to end up being a really solid army.
Hmm.
But you have to know what you're doing to get everything out of this army.
Mm.
So don't lose faith if you're struggling with it, because the entirety of Ignite has been trashed by Liam using CSM for the past 2 months. So
30 possessed is OP. All right, now on to another one of your fabled ones.
Oh, it's me
In the
again.
balanced data slate, 0 point changes,
No,
which
no rules changes. Yeah, no rules changes
I
either.
don't believe there's any rules changes either.
Mhm. No.
So I get a feeling that, like from an outsider's perspective, it doesn't really play Aeldari. I've played Aeldari, of course, but where's the love for this faction anymore, man? Like, I think it's
Mhm.
been. I mean, the last balanced data slate they randomly put some points down on units that then never ever even still got played right. And
Yeah.
this balanced data slate, they just have like no changes, no
Mhm.
rules changes. Like they're just in literal purgatory,
Mhm.
just in complete solitary confinement. Does no one like want to do anything with this faction? It's really weird because
It is
like
weird.
they
It
have
is
so
weird.
much design space, and
Mm.
I appreciate that it's not the fast, it's not the funnest play style to play against if you're the
Mhm.
opponent. But at the same time, like there's lots of units that aren't really, they aren't the cause of that problem, so to speak, right? And they
Mm.
could really, I feel like they've just gone, this is too hard, and we're just not going to even look at it anymore.
Yeah.
From an outsider's perspective, though, yeah,
Yeah. No, I think you know what? I actually personally think Eldar are perfectly balanced here.
really,
I think they are bang on in the right place they should have been from the start. But
okay.
it's a little bit because of the meta. Now, I think as an army, Eldari, the index detachment, is brilliant. It has like 5 brilliant stratagems. It has an incredible detachment rule. The enhancements, you can often find yourself taking 3 of those enhancements as well.
If by brilliant you mean very strong, right?
Yeah, but like extremely good, right?
Okay, right.
And you know, it's been toned down a little bit. It's like it's so
Yeah,
balanced, Dave.
yeah.
The way it's written, the Fire and Fade is 2 CP. The
I think
Phantasm is a D6 move.
you could argue it's a little. The detachment is one of the better ones, and it's a little bit too
Mhm.
strong, and that's why they've put the input points increases on all the data sheets instead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Eldar have some significant meta weaknesses.
Hmm.
They aren't able, like, the output level of the army is not enough to deal with a lot of threat in your face.
Mm.
It's not able to deal with armies deep striking into you, and it's not able to deal with indirect fire.
Mm.
So, if any of these three elements are extremely strong, or if two or more of them are prevalent in the meta, for example, the last meta was Aquilons, 3-inch deep striking, Grey Knights, Necrons, everyone deep striking into your face,
Hmm.
and you also had three Exorcists.
Yeah.
If all of these things exist, then Eldar can't survive in the meta,
Hmm.
despite having all these brilliant rules.
But the balanced data set would argue that much of that has disappeared, right?
Yeah. So I think if Eldar got too heavy of a points drop, which they probably deserve if you look statistics only,
I think so. Yeah.
I think they could come into too strong a place here.
Okay.
They also interestingly sit very well in a meta that's skewed towards vehicles,
Yes.
because they have access to good anti-tank that is either extremely high damage or devastating wounds.
Yep. Well, and obviously the combination with fire and fade there as well, which is
Yeah,
really
fire and
the key
fade,
part.
reroll a hidden wound makes them very consistent with these things. So, they're not going to be able to deal with 30 possessed in your face, but they might be able to deal with a Star Shatter Arsenal,
Yes. Yep.
or like 9 Custodes Dreads. There's a chance they could deal with that if they skew for it. So, I think Eldar come out of this quite positively.
Yeah.
Personally,
Okay.
I could see myself playing them in singles. I could see myself finding a way to play them in teams. I think they're a low A tier army now.
Low A
Personally.
tier.
Yeah,
Oof.
I
Because
know.
behind the scenes, guys, Vic and
Mm.
I both agreed that Eldar was arguably one of the worst armies in the game
What?
in the previous
No,
meta.
I was saying all the way through that last tier list. You know what, Dave? I think Eldar are better than this. I could beat
Oh,
T-Suns with
really?
Eldar. No problem. Yeah, I thought we underrated them last time, but I'm a
Okay.
bit biased.
I could have sworn in one of our chats we kind of thought you could see Eldar being one of the worst singles armies in the game in the current in the previous
Yeah,
meta, right? Where
they were.
they're
The previous meta was very aggressive against
yeah.
Eldar, to be
Mm.
honest. Now,
I still worry that sometimes there
mm.
might be some armies that can field a lot of units, right? That they might end up struggling into
So
because
if Eldar aren't attacked behind walls,
mm,
and you look at their anti-infantry output, for the amount of points they pay, it's actually brilliant.
okay,
The
yeah,
amount of anti-infantry output they have. So I think it's very hard. Like, for example, Brian plays as Orks.
sure,
Brian says he has serious problems beating Eldar with Orks, which you would not imagine, right?
yeah, no,
Yeah, but the output is there if you're able to skew into it and your units are able to survive and activate.
yeah,
Eldar have a massive problem when they start losing units.
yeah. So you
But
can't rock up to the table with the wrong tools. Like
mhm,
if this is the tournament where you need 3 fire prisms, then if you rock up without 3 fire prisms, it's
yeah,
like, well,
you're
you
done.
might as well not even be playing the game, right?
But let's take the Striking Scorpion datasheet.
Sure,
That datasheet for 65
it's
points
pretty good.
is nuts.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts. And Eldar can field so many little units like that. Swooping Hawks, Striking Scorpions, Corsairs, they're pointed to move. So I think
Okay.
Eldar are an A tier army now.
Eldar stock's going up, eh? All right,
Hmm.
not what I was expecting. Not what I was expecting. Okay. All right. There we go. On to the big man, big G man,
Oh,
Yeoman.
Space Marines or
Okay.
Ultramarines? Do any other Marines exist?
Yeah, we've got Dark Angels and Blood Angels in here, though I'm not sure why you would play anything else apart from Ultramarines now.
Oh,
This is a bit of an interesting one because depending and Warhammer is a bit like this, I think. Whereas depending on who you ask, and Warhammer is so subjective, even though we have great resources like StatCheck that will provide you aggregate statistics on things, so much of that is what a lot of people would at the very high end I think would just call noise to a certain degree, right? And a lot of people like me myself in particular, I would sort of say, well, tell me what it's actually like if the best player on this actually plays the best player on that, for example, right?
mm,
And it's super rare that the statistics actually indicate or are reflective of the best player playing this versus the best player playing that. And Ultramarines is a good example of this because depending on who you asked, prior to December, prior to the balanced update, I think a lot of people would say Ultramarines, you could argue, is the best army in the game. And that may shock the listener. They might
mhm.
go, wow, that's complete bullshit, David, because they've got a 40% win rate or whatever. Yeah, they have a 40% win rate, but somehow those players are not playing the correct builds. They're not playing the correct, macro strategy, and this has been a little bit of a new phenomena, so to speak, as well. I think it's been pretty recent that this Ultramarines thing has really kicked off because in the last change before this, it was all about the ballista dreads, and then the meta shifted to where Ultramarines kind of had a good matchup, maybe against Guard, against GSC. So because those armies becoming more popular, Ultramarines actually becoming more viable, then people started playing it more. So it's very surprising to me that Ultramarines got what is a pretty significant buff. And it actually comes on two sides here because they got the buff with +1 to wound against your oath target, which, by the way, is an enormous buff.
Huge.
And you might think, well, David, my las cannons are wounding on 3s anyway. How big of a buff is that? Well, let me tell you, it is not a ranged buff. It is a melee buff. And we'll go through that in a second. Because the same thing happened with Star Shadow Arsenal. Now, Gilliman did go back up in points, so maybe you do play Gilliman, you don't play Gilliman, but and Uriel went up in points, so they took a bit of a points hit in there as well. But a lot of their units became so much more efficient because of this +1 to wound ability, and really an area which they lacked, which was kind of melee combat attrition. Being able to actually dig your opponent out from behind an objective. Tango in the mid board with a melee unit that's not just going to trade down consistently. With this +1 to wound mechanic, it suddenly turns on a lot of units. Like, let's just take a look at Blade Guard bits, right? I think they have like 3 or 4 attacks at 622, I want to say. Now, Blade Guard bits are like the easiest thing in the world to clean up afterwards. You just point your Lehman Ross battle tank at them. They fail 3 saves. You've killed 3 already, right? Like, no one, realistically speaking, was playing Blade Guard veterans, or take company heroes, right? I think they have a very similar profile. Now, if you instead looked at that data sheet and said, this weapon is now strength 10 at 622, well, yeah, it becomes a lot better, a lot better, obviously. So instead of previously where you'd be wounding on 3s, you're wounding on 2s. When you'll be wounding a vehicle on 5s, for example, you're now wounding on 4s. So it's a massive boost to a lot of melee data sheets. And actually, Star Shadow Arsenal has a similar strat, which actually isn't a ranged buff, it's a melee buff. Not to mention the fact that you can get the range buff with +1 to hit, with reroll hit and +1 to wound, potentially play indirect fire as well, which we don't know, might turn up being popular. Certainly it's not going to be fun to play against. And then you can actually swap the oath target onto your melee unit, which is now going to be available to advance and charge, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Ultramarines are really, really good. The Ballistus Dreadnought data sheet didn't go up, which I thought was very surprising. And did the Vindicator go up?
No, I don't.
I would find that kind of surprising because if I were to look at a couple of data sheets which people kind of played a lot, right? The Vindicator is 175,
Yeah, press
and
the move.
people were playing them a lot, right? Like, I think that was one of the most popular Space Marine data sheets to be played. Everyone was just like, well, I don't really know what to round my list out with. I'll just put 3 Vindicators in, right? And like, if you're an opponent, you'd be like, damn, my opponent's got 3 Vindicators. that wasn't something you scoffed at. It was like, oh, damn, they have 3 Vindicators.
Yeah.
And yeah, what were
You know,
your thoughts, David?
I find it interesting because I think it's a little different to Star Shadow Arsenal,
Okay.
where I completely agree with you. The melee units buff is pretty useful for them. I think Ultramarines are still primarily a shooting army, but they're very mixed arms. The company heroes are still priced to absolutely move.
Definitely.
Guilliman is an excellent counterattack piece, and so is Ventress, going with some of these company heroes. And I think you only need a little bit of melee counterpunch because
Sure.
now your little intercessors and things like that can just trade for you a little bit better.
Yeah.
But the shooting gets such a big buff by getting +1 to wound. The consistency goes through the roof when you have reroll hits and +1 to wound on an army that was already very consistent with its shooting. So I think there's going to be very few armies that can win a straight up gunfight with Space Marines. So from a purely balanced perspective, I think they probably could have excluded Ultramarines from the +1 to wound on Oath because they have a little list of factions which don't get the +1 to wound on Oath. They could have just put Ultramarines. For a balanced perspective, we would have been left with people playing their Raven Guard White Scars with +1 to wound and having a reason to play them.
Yeah.
But saying that, I can kind of understand it. Ultramarines have been getting a lot of attention at the moment both from the Space Marine game and the secret level animation. There's
bro,
there's a mate,
stop. Come on, you're not
there
going
is a
down this
lot
path.
going on there.
Oh,
And
bro.
as someone who loved the Space Marine game,
Oh, come on.
now I feel like my intercessors
Vic, man,
are
we're
going
not
to
that type
hit
of
what they're doing next game.
podcast, bro. No, man, we're not that type of podcast. Come on, bro.
It's all about explanation, Dave. This is how the world works. Now, my every single Space Marine is Lieutenant Titus now and I'm gonna go and kill some Tyranids and some T-Suns. And I'm gonna feel it because I got +1 to wound. Bang, bolter, bang.
Yeah, man. Those heavy bolters are now what they are in the lore, you know.
Yeah, they're wounding on 2s everywhere. But that's what it is, like the Space Marines will now feel like Space Marines when they're hitting something. But
Great.
they needed some tweaks to balance because there are some areas that are too strong. The Gladius detachment as a whole is a little bit too strong.
Yeah.
They needed some downward level of balance
Sure.
to something in there. At the moment, you've just taken an army which was secretly one of the best armies in the game and made it into the best army in the game.
Yes, and like they did take some points. Like we're not going to play around that, you know. Like okay, but the reality is also that the things that took points also got buffs, right? Like Reavers got buffed, or I don't know why Manius Calgar got put up in points. I don't know what that guy did. Like heavy intercessors, okay, you know, they took points increases, but they also went to like damage 2, right? So you know, it's the same as the tank commander's quadrant thing. Like they are actually getting a buff there if you unless you simply look at the points. You know, Stern Guard, whatever went up, but they got reroll wounds, right? So, you know, arguably that's a huge buff. Whether or not they'll get played, whatever, but also Space Marines have a huge index as well. So they are a premium army at side grading. If anything becomes suddenly too expensive to play, they've got a lot of different options there as well. So,
Honestly, it'll be quite a fun army to play with. Okay. I think though it's going to be a little bit overtuned here. It's just going to depend on the kind of the number of people adopting it.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of really viable options here, and a lot of top players are faction specialists in some factions, which is often not Marines, to be honest, base Marines. So it'll be interesting to see how many people switch over to them and help push the community in a direction. You see this with armies like Drukhari and GSC. You have someone like Skari and Innis, respectively, who push everyone towards success. Do we have that with Space Marines? Let's see. You know,
it's difficult to think of someone right off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got John Lennon. If he does that, then it could be a very different story to otherwise, because Space Marines are still going to be played by a huge number of people who just want to go and chill and just play their cool models. And they'll definitely do a little bit better now.
Yeah, there we go. So we're happy to put this up on S tour.
I think it's going to be right up there.
Cool. All right, maybe you do want to cover this next one as well, Vic.
Oh no! That looks like a man on a horse to me? A man on a horse who can no longer give orders to things. That's what I see.
Yes. Interesting. So, the last time Guard took heavy nerfs, I probably incorrectly and too hastily said, the faction's done. Mainly because I also didn't play Bulgrin because I hated that data sheet, which I admit it, I was wrong. Guard was still really powerful, but there was also a lot of other shifts in the game that made Guard become a lot better as well at the same time. So what I'm going to say now is that Guard are actually still, I would probably say, an A-tier army. I think Guard are definitely better than Aeldari, for example. And mainly because whilst they did take points, they do have a very wide index range, and they do have options to side grade. So there's a couple of things there. So I think my list that I played at the ITT, I was just playing like the take all comer list. I was playing like a very close to singles list that I'd play for Guard. I think that went up roughly 140 points. So 130, 140 points. That is a Chimera and 10 Catachan. Not nothing, that's for sure. But I was also playing Iron Hand Strachan, a Psyker, or whatever like that. So I had definitely some things to optimize. What I thought was interesting was that, okay, so the points wise, I think they took the right approach to the Guard points. And this was something that I actually advocated for a lot, which was actually you need to tune down the board control elements to the list. And that's really what they've targeted here. The Catachan Jungle Fighters, the Chimera. I think the Chimera went up a little bit too much. I would have put 10 on it personally, because now you side grade into other transports and it kind of defeats the purpose, maybe. Leontis, I think, it deserved to go up. Ghosts, I think, maybe not. The Hellhound deserved to go up, for example. They missed a couple of things here, though. I don't know why they didn't put all the Lehman Russ variants just up 10 points, because actually the 10-point reduction has made them really, really good now. And if you look at what you get for a 170-point tank, like a Lehman Russ battle tank, sure, the main cannon doesn't have AP, or has AP1, but AOC has now been nerfed on top of that as well. And in a vehicle kind of shootout, a Lehman Russ hull is a really high premium for what you get for 170 points. Like, the reality is it comes with a lot of guns, and it's really, really tough to kill. So actually, I was really, really surprised that they didn't put these Lehman Russ variants up. I would have put all of them up 10 points at a minimum, basically. Not the tank commander, probably. I would have put the Rogue Dawn up probably 10 points as well. That's just me. What I didn't like what they did is I actually don't think the Ogryn Bulgrin change, I don't think the Leontis change to make it so he can only order regiment and squadron was done very well at all. In fact, I don't actually think there was much thinking behind that process at all. Actually, like once Bulgrin went up to 220 for 6, they almost dropped off the face of the earth. They weren't really played anymore. Uh, no one was winning tournaments running lots of Bulgrin. Like I had some lists that were like my top end competitive list that had a 1 unit of 6, depending on the terrain format and the meta that you're expecting to hit into. But I think that's a good position for them at the same time, right? Like having situationally a list that you might play 1 unit of 6 is probably a good indication of where their strength is. And what actually ended up happening out of this is that now Leontis can't even order any Astra Militarum unit that doesn't have squadron or regiment, like the super heavies, for example, which they probably didn't even consider. But so what I would have done is I wouldn't have made this change anyway. But what I would have done is I would have just strapped that keyword to only Ogryn and Bulgrin, not hit everything, because I think that's a little bit weird personally. They also put Scions up 20 points. I don't know why they, for some reason, want to have Scions and Kasrkin at different point ranges. They're both Astra Militarum, well, they're both Imperial Guard elite infantry, and I would have just had them at the same point range. I would just had them at 110, not 120 and 110, because then there was a point where Kasrkin were 120, Scions 100. Like we just danced around like, okay, one's 110, one's 120. Like I'm playing one or the other now. So yeah, I don't actually know if Scions were like super OP anyway. I mean, John Winter Russell did really well with them at World Champs. John Lennon played 1 unit. Like, they're not exactly like being mega spammed to the point where they're really, really like oppressive at all. So I don't know if the Scion kind of point increase was justified. But having said that, Guard do have some good options, and Guard is really a faction where if you rock up to the table with the right combination of units, it can be really devastating against your opponent. Like if you think Custodes is going to be popular and Necron is going to be popular, then hey, Limros Battle Tank is really good at killing Doomsday Arcs, for example. It's just strength 10, AP1, flat 3. So if you catch that sucker with no cover, just taking 4-ups against you, man. It's all flat 3. And at the same time, you can just pop smoke, maybe even have -1 damage, and he's still good after that. So I think Guard are actually in a good place right now. They were the arguably best army in the game coming into this balanced data slate. So I think I was expecting more around the 100 point range, but it's ended up being the 130 to 140 point range. So I think all well and said, we're still looking perfectly fine. You can still win a GT, you can still win a super major with Guard. Actually, I think they do have the right tools for the job, but understanding what you need for your terrain and what you're expecting to be in the meta in the later rounds of the tournament is going to be absolutely critical. What do you think, Vic?
How big is the changes to the Aquilons? Like, let's say they're gone,
completely
right?
did. Yeah, never
Yeah.
played them again.
Let's say, yeah, they are gone. How does that affect things?
So this is the real problem that Guard run into now is that so what's interesting, there's so many things there, but without getting into the new detachment that what is going to come tomorrow, which I don't know, but that is obviously another conversation to be parked. Guard have very, very little to zero options of viable melee units, really. Ogryn, not really viable melee. Bulgrin now can't be ordered. Adelan Rough Riders have never really been good, so I mean, it's a tough design space to be in, right? Because at the same time, you increase the points cost on the transports and the infantry that actually play Warhammer to a very fair and honest degree. But at the same time, then you nerf them and you don't really make the melee any more viable at all. Especially if there might be like indirect whirlwinds, for example. Like you can't even rock up to the table with Atlan Rough Riders in that case, if that's a thing. So, with no access to fallback and shoot, like we see a lot of these new detachments come out with, it's a tough place to be in as well, I think.
5 Grey Knight Terminators, mate. Get
5
those
Grey Knight
Imperial
Terminators
agents in.
is
Yeah, better
maybe
build
not the
run.
worst thing ever. They do resurrect, or maybe take some Death Watch, some
Oh,
Thunder Hammers.
yes.
I
Yes.
do own some of those.
Get that
But
kill team in there.
it's an interesting one. That is all obviously contextualized upon the detachment, right? So the detachment, I don't know what it is, but what a very common thing that's happened through all these detachments, and we talked about at the beginning of the show, is that a lot of them have pretty copy and pasted stratagems. And
Mhm.
I'm going to go out and say it. Guard have the worst combination of enhancements and stratagems in the entire game. I would I would challenge anyone to show me a competitive detachment that's been worse than them. Because
The
none of
detachment rule has become good, right?
the
With the
detachment
lethal
rule is
hits.
good, definitely. Lethal hits is good. Don't get me wrong, but the enhancements and stratagems are fucking terrible. The enhancements are awful. And the stratagems, believe it or not, reinforcements is actually nowhere near as good as it used to be. Like, you would use it, but you use it on like turn 3, then maybe your unit has an impact on turn 4. It's like nowhere near as good. In fact, I think 2 out of my 5 games at ITT, I didn't even use it. So I'm literally CP rerolling the smoke and tank shock and grenading people. So what that is that it leaves a lot of potential for guard to be very, very good if a detachment gets printed with good strats and enhancements, and even just a remotely good detachment rule. And yeah, like we've seen, a lot of these armies are getting like very generic stratagems like fall back and shoot, which would be absolutely enormous
Oh,
for guard.
oh.
Advance and shoot, which would be enormous for guard.
Mhm.
The potential is really, really high there.
Mhm.
Also, they didn't put Hydras up, and Hydras, if Necron's going to be popular, that's a pretty bloody good data sheet, mate. Rerolling anti-fly, reroll hits against fly. Doomsday Arcs have fly, so yeah. I mean, Claytor's Grav tanks also have fly, so yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, I
I
still think really
think
good.
I think we're going to find a lot of these top of A tier armies are just good shooting with scoring in front of it.
Yeah,
Admech is a perfect example, and I don't see Guard being considerably worse than Admech, to be
no,
honest.
not at all. I think you could argue at guard are better than Admech in some degree, right?
Pretty much the same level, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's chuck them up there, mate. I put
I
my
don't think they're as
Eldar up
good
a
as
little bit.
CSM. I think CSM are better than Admech. But I think
My thing with CSM, I think they actually got a little worse, in
okay.
my opinion. I think the heavier vehicle meta is not what they want to play against.
Mm,
I think the way the meta is shaped out, CSM actually dropped down a few places in my mind. We put them
okay.
really high in the last one.
Yeah.
This is not the meta they want. They want to be hitting orcs in the face,
Well, they might get the chance.
They
Um,
might get the chance. So
um,
I would personally put CSM just below Guard there, but I don't mind putting Admech above Guard. I
okay,
think those
cool.
two armies are pretty much in the same spot.
We'll see how A tier lines up in the end
Hmm.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm looking forward to the detachment. I'll be doing a members video on the guard changes, and then tomorrow I'll be doing a review of the guard detachment, of course, and I'll be doing my members section for the new guard detachment builds, whatever they may be. I'm either hoping they're Scion detachments, the
Oh.
Tempestus detachment,
Oh.
or it's going to be a Sentinel based one. So we'll see what it lines up to be. Alrighty, now on to another spicy McSpice a lot that I've had a couple of games of playing. um, Star Shadow Arsenal. Yes, an extremely good detachment.
Oh yeah, it seems pretty fair and balanced to me.
it's pretty fair.
Fair and balanced.
Holy dude. By the way,
Yeah.
I was expecting this army to get like 150 point nerf on this
Oh
past stage
yeah.
slate. So, uh, absolutely mind blowing that this army got off scot free, I would say. In fact, you could argue that it's been buffed on
It
points.
has. The
Um,
Catan went up, but
yeah.
then a chunk of other stuff went down as
Hmm.
compensatory buffs.
Yep.
And the main thing is none of the vehicles or the things that you would see in Star Shadow Arsenal went up.
Yep, exactly. So I actually did a video on the member section about my thoughts on this detachment after playing 3 games with it, and very quickly I came to the conclusion that you want to play 3 Doomsday Arcs, Silent King, and then the rest of that is actually melee mission play and counterplay there. The main reason is that Star Shadow Arsenal. The reason why it's such a bad detachment is design wise is that there's no reason to play any other detachment. Every unit you look at is better in Star Shadow Arsenal. And the main point here is that a lot of these Necron data sheets that previously were bad because they either had low strength or they didn't have rerolls are now all of a sudden very good. So what comes to mind is I was playing this unit before the points changes even as well. I was playing Ophidian Destroyers before them because in Star Shadow Arsenal, you get +1 to hit, so you hit on 2s. But the problem with their datasheet is always it's strength 4 minus 2, 2. Well, what does that combo well with? Well, +1 to wound, obviously. So your strength 4 +1 to wound, 2, 2 with 5 attacks per model. These guys have crazy good output, especially if you're Nexus Silent King, where you're going to be hitting on 2s, rolling 1s. Then you get 6s dev wounds once per game. They also fix a bit in your mission play. Flayed ones, by the way, absolutely slap in this detachment. Oh my word. If somehow you can get your opponent's unit under half strength, or not even then, if you just charge your opponent's unit on an objective with 10 flayed ones, oh my word, if they don't have Armor of Contempt, like they're probably dying. Like, oh my word. These guys are like twin linked 4-1-1, but they have like 5 attacks each, and they hit on, I think, 2s in this detachment now with exploding 6s. And if you reroll 1s next to Silent King, yeah, really, really hit hard. You can just run them in the 5-mans as well. So if you want to learn more about it, I got a video in the members section. I'll probably update that in a bit. What I think might happen with this detachment though is that people won't build it correctly. I kind of assumed that you'd play a very heavy vehicle list, but after immediately one game, I thought Annihilation Barges, Triax Stalkers, okay, nowhere near as good as I thought. Screw that. By the way, I was also playing, I didn't realize, because I was playing for the spoilers, I didn't know you could use +1 to wound on all the melee, and all the melee also got +1 to hit. So then as soon as the full detachment came out, I thought, oh my god, I just got to play a lot of good melee units now. So you have this like castle of silent -1 damage Silent King that can just bully your opponent. Like -1 damage Silent King is absolutely bonkers to play with, by the way.
With a 6-inch reactive move when he gets
Oh,
shot. And he can move through walls.
So what I love to do is in my build actually I've got a unit of 6 Locust Destroyers, and I play Emotech the Stormlord. And what I do is turn 1 as actually -1 damage to the Locust Destroyers, and then move them 14 inches advanced and shoot through a wall if I need to with the auto 6. What that means is that you've got this unit of -1 damage, kind of like Marine profiles with 3 wounds that are really hard to actually finish off and kill. Then you stage your Silent King, and then next turn you probably lose like 4 destroyers, you fall them back away from it. Then your Silent King moves out and actually plays really aggressive with -1 damage. And then you sit your -1 damage on him for the rest of the game because your opponents come now. They've shown to shoot your destroyers, and you get to shoot them back with everything now. So I quite like the destroyers. I like the unit of heavy destroyers as well. I don't like filling the detachment up with too many characters and stuff that doesn't actually do much. So you kind of have to be really careful about how much you run there. So yeah, very, very good detachment. Really good. I hope that people play and build it correctly because I think it really can shine.
Extremely badly written, in my opinion. I think they've
Yes.
given them everything in that detachment. Yes. That's too much. Yeah.
Vic, in your opinion, what was the most egregious part of that detachment? Enhancement, stratagem, or
Oh my
detachment?
god, every single thing is good, Dave. But my like the thing that I can't deal with, I can deal with everything else, is just the 6-inch reactive move when you're shot on vehicles.
That's that one.
I just can't deal with that because what a pain.
I mean, how does that make sense lore-wise? I agree, but for me, it's the -1 damage. Just being able to put that on Silent King is just absolutely absurd. Like, I mean, obviously Magnus can go -1 damage, but you're talking a 26 wound model with 2 up 4 up with multiple
It's not
models.
good. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's incorrect. So if I can see anything getting dealt with in like a random FAQ before the next balance update, it's this. It's just
Yes.
awfully written.
Whew, what a stinker. All right. In terms of another good attachment, why don't you talk to us about Custodes?
Oh,
Because actually, they've kind of
Custodes.
come in with a bit of a splash recently.
Oh, Custodes are like secretly good.
Mm.
Obviously, they won world champs, but
Mm.
they're secretly good. And this detachment that they got, the kind of dreadnought based detachment, actually damn good.
Yep.
Getting so much extra movement on your dreadnoughts. They get +2 move with the ability to move through walls. It makes for a really interesting kind of quite strong playstyle, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't very hard to play as well. So
Mm.
I have a feeling this is going to be very popular. The grav tanks with the dreadnoughts in front of them, and you just
Yep.
run forward and smack your opponent in the face.
Yep.
Most people can't deal with this level of attrition because the venerable contemptor dreadnoughts get back up when they die the first time. So
Sick.
you basically end up playing against like 11 dreadnoughts.
Oh
So
gosh.
it's awful to play against. It looks stupid. It doesn't make any sense lore wise. And sadly, this is Custodes. Whenever they become good, they're just a pain.
Yep.
Uh,
It's I have nothing but agreement with you.
oh, they're such a
This
pain.
army probably costs about £7 to 3D print.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. No one's gonna buy any of this real.
Yeah.
Unless they're a
Uh,
millionaire.
Absolutely crazy. Yeah, I mean, I know we saw Custodes really popular back when Crusher Stampede was around a couple of years back. That was when what were they playing? All the Bikes. That's right, all the Bikes. And yeah, I'm sorry if you're a Custodes fan, but you're going to be really enjoying this detachment at least. Once again, they just print move through walls on just generic stratagem. Why don't they just make that a core rule stratagem? Walk
It's a
through
good
walls.
stratagem. I think
Oh
that's a
yeah,
good
really,
rule.
no shit.
It really helps stuff kind of get around the board in quite a restrictive little rule set. But Custodes, you know what? They're quite a cool army. Like if I look at like a Telemon Dreadnought, I'm
Mm.
like, damn, that's cool. That's a golden Dreadnought. Hits on twos because there's a Custodes in there. You know, Custodes, they want to go into a Dreadnought when they die, and it's so rare that it happens. How cool is that? But
That's cool.
seeing 9 of them on the board, I'm like, oh man, come on. Hold on a second, mate.
So
You know, you've
you
got
think
the
that's the
entire.
build?
It's
Do
gonna
you
be
so do you
something.
play
I
like a
mean,
couple
it's
of
bound to be something like that.
do you play a couple of tanks in the back, and then just rest is just dreadnoughts? Maybe not like a blade champ and wardens and all that stuff. Just don't waste your time with that.
I mean, maybe you could run one unit, but the dreadnoughts are so good because they shoot and combat,
Oof.
and they're very fast. So
Well, what
I
makes
don't
them
think
so
you need
fast?
anything
Do
else.
they move 10
They get
inches?
plus. They get +2 move. So they move 12, and it's 1 CP
12.
to move through walls. Yeah,
Holy shit, that's fast.
speedy boys.
Oh my word.
I know,
Okay.
and girls.
Well, that's not
Custodians can
good
be
for my guard.
girls.
I don't like that.
Um,
Do they have any mortal wound protection?
No, this is the thing. So
Oof.
you can take them down with mortal wounds. So
Okay.
armies like T-Suns, Aeldari, they
Yep.
can take a lot of wounds through the 4-up invul.
Hmm.
So it depends how the meta goes. If the meta is trying to counter Star Shatter Arsenal, a bunch of Ultramarine vehicles, then Custodes are also going to be caught in the fire line because they're also going to be popular.
Nice.
So you can just skew hard
Oof.
for vehicles and get some
Kassakin stock's
success.
going up, man. Damn.
Beautiful.
Melt
Man,
mine.
where's my Wraith Knight?
Are they better than Necrons?
I
Up
think they're
against them?
only an A tier, honestly.
Really? Okay.
I think they're at the top of A tier.
Okay, I can see that. I can, by the way, I can see Necrons being quite good against this army, actually, in
Mhm.
hindsight. I mean, having a swingy 4-up invuln, and then on addition, the reactive countershoot is pretty nice. Also, the Locust
Mhm.
Destroyers, do kind of slap with damage too. They have one -1 damage guy, but you can also go ignore mods as well on Silent King, and you've got a
Yeah.
bunch of like heavy shooting elements with you. So it'd be really interesting to see how these two detachments play against each other.
Yeah, that's an interesting game.
Hmm.
Because the Custodes army, it doesn't sound fast, but watching it play on the board is blisteringly fast.
Ah, I see. Yep.
And sometimes it's hard to get away from it. So I think it's a very interesting matchup between Star Shatter and
Oof.
Custodes. I think
Sweet.
that's a close game.
Damn. Damn. Alrighty, GSC.
Oh, big
Now,
changes for GSC.
I think GSC took quite a big nerf, if I'm being honest.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
going for
yeah.
the nerf approach. I'm going
Oh,
to go the
yeah.
opposite approach, mate.
Okay, here's my
I
logic.
think.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
So many of these games, you would see these GSC lists 30, 15 aberrants, 30 pure strains, hybrid metamorphs, whatever, right? All this crap. This is a dumb army. I'm just gonna get this out of the way now. This is a dumb army, and I hate this army. I hate the biosectic build that it was before. And
Mhm,
on average, you'd be getting back like 5 to 6 units, and some of these
mhm.
units were very, very big. And it incentivizes just brain dead throwing your army at your opponent for the first couple of turns really heavily, because obviously your resurrection rolls much better at that point, right? So your goal is to go first, infiltrate, and then throw your army at your opponent, and then just ask them, "Can you kill all this stuff?" And then just deep strike. For some reason, they all have deep strike, and then they printed a godly strat that if your opponent doesn't have some 10-man 3-inch deep strike unit, they're basically screwed anyway. So yeah, this army actually had such a good win rate against so many armies that it
Mhm,
was crazy. Like, you're playing Blood Angels, what are you doing, mate? Like, you've lost. You're playing World Eaters, you're dead. It's really tough. So I think they got nerfed hugely because
Okay.
you're only realistically going to be bringing back 2 units. Now, you do get to know what those units are.
Mhm,
Maybe 3 if you're running the 5-man aberrants, right? Sure, get back your aberrants, right? That's fine. But now your opponent has so much more. They actually understand how the point resurrection works. They've got so much more control over what they are going to kill and what they're not going to kill.
mhm.
Because they might just tag something up and be like, okay, I'm not going to do that. What, you have your one aberrant or whatever now. Now, once they've used the points up to, they just go ballistic and table your army as fast as
Yep.
possible.
Yep.
And GSC is very easy to table. So previously, you had to worry about overextending into their deep strike abilities. But now, once they've used the resurrections, you just go full ham mode and disrespect them, and you get stuck in on the objectives. And yeah, it's definitely an army that is kind of made of paper. That's my take.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because there's pros and cons, isn't there, to
Mm-hmm.
this rule? It's GSC players at some point going to have bad games where they just get none of their res rolls,
Yep.
and that is avoided now. But
Yep.
saying that, the Biosanctic build was basically front load as much damage, lose loads of units at the start, and do it again.
Yeah.
And that build is not going to be as effective because you are actually going to get less back with this point system.
Yep.
So that's an immediate nerf to that particular build. Now, the previous build was the kind of Outlander, I think it's called,
Outlander
with the
Claw. Yep.
bikes. Bikes MSU. I think that is still very strong. I think you can get up to like 6 units back on that or
Okay.
something.
Yep.
Like you can get loads of these little units back,
Sure.
and it's a 5-turn game. You can still play to just win the game.
Yep.
Have a little bit of output. Is it so good in a vehicle meta? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that once the points are gone, you're just going to absolutely table them without any fear of having to screen or anything like that. You're just going to
Yep.
smack them in the face. So, where do you think they end up, Dave?
Ooh, I definitely don't think they're as strong as Guard. That's for sure.
All right.
Oh, are they
Maybe,
better than Aeldari?
just above Eldar, maybe.
I think so, personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
see them. Because I do think you're right. The fundamentals of that Outlander Claw build is still quite powerful.
Mhm.
But what I would say is almost nobody, there's only a couple of people on the planet that really play that well.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
the majority of players, like 95% of GC players, we're playing the Biosanctic build. So whether the stats end up reflecting that in the long run, I'm not so sure.
I have to give it to the GSC player base though, because the GSC player base is a very skillful player base.
Really? This is the player
I
base that ignored the fact that their codex was good for so long until Innis started playing
Yeah.
it and was
I
like, yeah,
mean,
this is broken.
you can say the same thing about the Sisters Index. It
Sure.
just needed one person to go like, oh, you know what? 10 Arcoflagellants, those are good. Let's try those guys. Okay, let's all play the same thing now. So, GSC, they do have a good player base. So,
Yeah, they do.
if let's say Innis carries on playing GSC, does a few tournament reports, people are going to actually adopt what he says rather than tell you that, no, I want to play what I want to play.
Yep.
So,
Fair enough. Yeah. No, I do think you're right. Like historically, GC players are like GC is quite a technical army to play, and
mhm,
obviously the Biotechnic build is not really reflective of that at all. I
mhm,
don't think. That's just like throw the kitchen sink at your opponent. I think I could definitely see a world where the GSC players that do stick around are more of those like die-hard technical players that have
mhm,
played for a long time and probably could transition into a different build. Maybe the index attachment, right, where you just come down on turn 2 and try and nuke them with everything, and then you have another unit that tries to come down and nuke them on turn 3. I don't know the point resurrection cost for that. So if if you know your GC and you know the original index build, let me know down in the comments if that's actually a good viable build based on the resurrection rolls at the moment. Because I wouldn't be surprised if they based all of those resurrection rolls and numbers on the Biosanctic build and didn't actually pay attention to the index, how that would affect the index, for example.
mhm.
Alrighty.
Yep.
Next up, got the Tyranids.
Tyranids.
Tyrannid stocks have been going up a little bit, man.
Oh yeah,
They've had a few
I
changes
think
here
so.
and there, but very slowly. The meta has shifted. I actually think Tyranids are low key very, very good right now.
Oh.
Sorry, not very, very good, but I think they're really good right now. Actually, I
Mhm,
think invasion fleet's in a really prime spot, and if your opponent is playing either all vehicle or they're playing all infantry, invasion fleet really shines that way because you're either going to get sustain one against their whole army or you're going to get lethal hits against their whole army.
mhm.
And very surprisingly, the Exocrine didn't go up again. And the Exocrine at 135 points
So cheap.
is very good.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a little bit baffled the fact that this thing keeps staying, and I think everyone in the Turner community is kind of the same. They're like, "Oh, Exocrine didn't go up again. Sick! Like, I've got my army." So if your meta is shaping up to be Ultramarine vehicles, Necron Starship Arsenal, Custodes with dreadnoughts and grav tanks, guess what? Yeah, your invasion fleet army is going to be pretty good there. Getting lethal hits is
Mhm,
just like really, really efficient against all those things. You're going to have a lot of mission play stuff. You're going to have a lot of like access to long range shooting. The Tyrannofix, believe it or not, lines up pretty well against all three of those armies. The Rupture Fix, that is. You can
mhm,
blank a Calidus Grav tank shot, then you can just shoot it back. You can maybe even one tap it. Um, Necron DDAs don't really like shooting them either. And then you can blank one thing and then shoot it back. 5-up, feel no pain. That data sheet's very, very, very hard for these armies to actually outshoot. And in a meta that
Nice.
could be looking more and more range orientated, just having a lethal hit, Tyrannofix with a 5-up, feel no brain, you know, pretty good. So, then that data sheet's already been playing a lot. So, yeah, I think Tyranids are pretty good. What do you think, man? You've been looking at them
Yeah.
very much?
I just loved your little slip there, saying "feel no brain" instead of "feel no pain." That was
That's
beautiful,
an
man.
inside
That's
community joke.
so on point. Beautiful. I think Tyranids
Oof.
have number of viable builds.
Yep.
I
Although
think.
Synaptic Nexus did take quite a big hit because they
Oh,
can't
did it?
AOC now. So the AOC was one of the best strats. So you get AOC like a Maliceptor or something like that for like
Mhm.
the whole thing, right? So the
Okay, so
Synaptic
maybe
Nexus
there's.
build took a big hit. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think Tyranids line up well. They're a good army. They've been a good army for a while now.
Yeah.
And I think they sit right up there in the A tier. Eldar are starting to look a bit stupid in the A tier, but they're not moving from there. They're an A tier army, mate. So just put everything above them.
I think I think honestly, I can see Tyranids being between Custodes and CSM.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I
No, I don't know. I don't think they're better than the Admech Guard, because I think Admech and
oof.
Guard play the mission as well as shoot long range.
Okay, I mean you could argue Tyranids do that as well, right? They've got like Genestealers, Broodlords, Hormagaunts, and
True,
shooting's
true.
very good as well.
Okay, they're
Uh,
they're also another one of those armies, aren't they?
yeah, I
Yeah,
think uh, they're better than Admech. Admech's pretty good right now.
Admech is pretty good.
I'm gonna be. I'm gonna go out on a limb. Although what I would say is, I'm gonna preface this:
Mhm,
if the meta does shake up to be quite skewed and vehicle orientated, and
mhm.
maybe just because we're saying this very often, people won't do that so much. But if they do, remember Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights also went down and got to good detachments. I think the invasion fleet could be quite good. And, honestly, killing a Tyrannofix or an Exocrine with a 5-up Feel No Pain is pretty tough. And these armies then just get heavy and shoot you back like pretty consistently, and they can feel no pain 2 units as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's got a good game into Starshade Arsenal actually.
I'm liking this tier list so far, mate. It's looking good. We're It's
Just
all
need to
A
move this one
tier.
bit, a little bit down here,
Well, no, the bottom of A tier is the top of B tier, so it's all fine.
Exactly, yeah. Oof, Death Guard. Wow.
Death Guard come out swinging with a decent early detachment in the Grotmas calendar,
Yes.
didn't they?
Yes, very
Uh,
much so. I've lost to this detachment with Liam playing it. This detachment is very secretly good. It has like you play like 18 Death Shroud, you play like 60 Poxwalkers, and Mortarion just got Deep Strike, which I actually think is quite a good buff.
he's
Now you
good.
can Rapid Ingress him a lot more, and although usually Rapid Ingress one of the Death Shrouds, so maybe you don't, maybe you do.
Can
Uh
even take some Blight Lords as well.
yeah, the
This is
Sorcerer is like really good in this one now as well.
it's a chunky detachment, but
Yeah,
I mean the index is chunky and good as well. So do they line up well?
oof, it's really tough, man. It's like if the meta is like only shooting, actually the scout detachment is really good against that because you can get
Mm-hmm.
-1 to wound on the poxwalkers, and the whole army is just straight up stealth. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, a really good army ability. The consolidate 6 inches consolidate pylon rule is really really good. That basically makes the whole detachment because you can hit a unit, then consolidate your terminators through that unit 6 inches, and then hit the unit behind that. Is really powerful.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard to do that whilst like move blocking them and being on the objective. Sometimes I find. So
Did you play them with Star Shatter or God?
I played them with guard. Yes.
With
Yeah.
God. How do you think Star Shatter with the ignore modifiers and things lines up here?
I think I could see it being quite good, if I'm being honest.
Mhm.
Ignore mods is pretty damn good against this army because, like, the thing about it is that the Terminators are -1 to wound and hit, which is a huge part of their durability. Like when they're led by a character, they get -1 to hit.
Mhm.
To be fair, Doomsday Arc does kind of crunch through that pretty easily. And Silent King with ignore mods is going to be on twos rerolling ones
It's
into
too much damage, isn't it?
12 twos rolling ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
it's quite a lot. So that's not a good lineup. And then I'm just looking down the list.
Or Ultramarines would be pretty good against that, I think. +1 to
Uh,
wound
yeah.
and rerolling hit.
But
Hmm.
this is just a Death Guard problem in general. Um,
Yeah, I mean, obviously the normal detachment's still really good, right?
yeah.
And the normal detachment might end up being better. The scout detachment's really good in a team setting where you
Hmm.
can prey on like a weak shooting list that might be vulnerable to just getting overrun,
Hmm.
not being able to chew through that much stuff at a time.
I,
I
I think, okay, I think they are in A tier, but worse than Eldar. Dave's gonna throw something at
That's
me.
right. I've had my last couple. You can have that one.
Yes. Yes. Okay, hold up. It's because of how it lines up into the meta. I think Eldar actually line up into these top armies with a lot of player skill. You got to play it really, really well, but I think they line up decently there.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
There we go. Dark Angels. We've kind of chewed through a bunch of them that we basically really wanted to focus on.
Mhm.
What about the old Dark Angels, mate?
Dark Angels.
Their new
Well, I think
detachment is fucking terrible.
it's kind of bad. Yeah, it's
It's not
really
the
hard
best.
to
Yeah,
it's hard to activate the little combo pieces with the
yeah.
Raven Wing and
It's
stuff.
another
So
one of these detachments that's like, why are you not playing Gladius?
yeah.
Yeah,
The Lion got a little points increase, but gained a 2 damage sweep.
yeah.
So the Lion is cool again.
He basically got an enhancement that you always have to take.
But I've never rated Dark Angels that highly, to be
Yep.
honest. Even the Gladius Dark Angels, I mean, I haven't won all my games against this, but I don't find it that good.
Mhm.
I just think it's just a solid, okay army that
Yep.
loses steam as the game goes on.
Yep.
I would personally put
It's the
Dark
first B tier.
Angels, yeah, maybe in the B tier here.
Cool. I agree.
Just the
Although
Gladius Dark Angels.
the context of this is that we often play them on UKTC where they struggle significantly more because Crucible is awful for that army.
Hmm.
Um, very hard to win
Yep.
on that map when your opponent just moves correctly. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, Drukhari.
Drukhari with the coolest detachment ever,
Why the fuck did
where
these guys get nerfed again?
oh yeah, actually no, this is actually a really sad story. I think this is as much of a tragedy as Sisters. And the balance approach, because I think it's extremely unfair to nerf Drukhari here. At least Sisters was sitting and playing in the A tier. Drukhari were already playing in the bottom tier
Yeah,
at this point, and they didn't get any buffs. They only got nerfs here, which is
crazy.
extremely harsh. And I don't know what's happened in the balance team for that to happen. Who's lost badly to Drukhari? Is there like some phenomenal Drukhari player there that's just killing everyone?
Yeah,
Skari alone is not enough to cause this much of a
no.
problem.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. I think
Yeah.
Drukhari are a really fun army to play against as well, if I'm
Mhm.
being honest. Like, I understand sometimes they have tricks and they get back into transports and they can jump around you and outplay you sometimes. Sure, but it was also really satisfying to kill them.
Mm.
And I think that's like generally a pretty perceived opinion, right? Like, you
Mhm.
don't really hear people being like, oh, bloody Drukhari, whatever. Like, Scourges can be a bit annoying, sure, but, at the end of the day, they die like elves as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and they're not that accurate to be honest as well.
no, pop smoke.
And interestingly, like grotesques went up in points.
Yeah.
Why? Why so harsh? Um, so Drukhari just got worse. This is not a good time to be a Drukhari player. Saying that, if you're a fluffy Drukhari player, you want some Harlequins, you want to have a little wager between your Harlequins and your Drukhari to see who gets their buffs. Damn, that is a cool detachment. So
That is cool.
I think Drukhari are in C tier with Sisters.
Yes. I think they're worse than Sisters, personally.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
Already. I mean, yeah. Would you want to play against 9 Dreadnoughts and Grave Tank with custom? No. You wouldn't want to play that.
Yeah,
You
they're
don't want
not in
that
a good
smoke.
place. They can't play against anything realistically in that
No,
list.
I don't think so.
Um,
Grey Knights.
Grey Knights are interesting. I think they got a buff with their detachment.
Okay, I haven't really looked at their
Overall.
detachment. So overall, it's generally perceived that that's like a better than their current
Yeah.
index, right? I guess.
Now there are some hoops to jump through,
Mhm.
but essentially the detachment is reroll ones to hit on Dread Knights, which is something that Dread Knights really miss.
Okay.
Basically, it's like the Chaos Demon rule, where if you control no man's land, opponent's
Yeah.
deployment zone,
Okay.
your
Yeah.
thing. Or if you're around Purifiers, Purifiers are your greater demons, basically.
Cool.
You get this buff of reroll ones to hit.
Cool.
And I think that pushes the output of the Dread Knights a little bit for you. Also, with AOC only activating once, that means they can actually get through some vehicles.
Yeah.
And purifiers are pretty good in this detachment as well. I
Cool.
still feel that the army runs out of points too quickly before it really establishes a full army.
Yeah.
But I think Grey Knights have gotten a little bit better than they were before. But I
Okay.
personally still rate them as a C tier army, just
I
above
think that
Eldar,
Dread Knights
above
and
Sisters.
yeah, I don't think Dread Knights are really, if you're playing a singles game, are a
Mm,
great approach to playing Warhammer. Just
yep.
for this edition, I just don't think it works out well at the moment.
Hmm.
Maybe previously at the start of the edition, 16 DKs was good, but the way that this edition is kind of shaped out has been more about durability and playing the game,
Hmm.
as opposed to just nuking your opponent's flank and then doing something else, doing something else.
Yeah.
So I just, if anything that incentivizes that game plan of like, oh yeah, it's basically a Dread Knight detachment, it's gonna it's gonna be tough to play because as soon as you knock one or two of them out and you play around them, it's tough,
Yeah.
isn't it?
There's less durability as well.
Oh,
No AOC,
no
no
sigil,
no
no
mists.
mist. Yeah.
Oh,
Oof.
yeah. So yeah, they'll melt in this meta.
Above
So
sisters.
yes, yeah, I think so.
Cool. All right, Imperial Knights. There's been some
Imperial
rumors
Knights.
that actually this army is quite good.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
haven't. I know. I just ignore knights usually.
just ignore Knights.
I make controversial comments.
I think Knights have graduated from being one of the worst armies in the game to
Mhm.
definitely not being one of the worst armies in the game.
Okay,
I'll be
that's
honest with you.
good. That's a
I
good
think
upgrade.
Knights are in B tier, and I
Yep.
think you could even argue that they're middle of B tier, maybe upper B tier as well. To be
Hmm.
perfectly honest, they got their new. I'm not sure on the new detachment, but they've just slowly been getting points decreases on top of that as well. And like, not a lot of people have really been like investing a ton of time in. Oh god, I'm going to offend some people. Like of the very, very toppest players, none of them have really been investing time into trying to discover this faction, whether it's good. I mean, the Swedes took it to WTC and did very well with it on top of that as well. So it definitely
Hmm.
shows it has potential there on
Hmm.
top of that. So I'm now a Knight believer. Oh
Oh.
yeah, of course they got their Adeptus Mechanicus detachment.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, is that good? Well,
I don't
time
know.
goes to tell.
Yeah.
You can
Um.
certainly play some cheaper units, but
So
yeah,
I have a question.
hmm,
So I'm here with my Eldar, right?
sure.
My Eldar, I'm like, okay, I've got to kill some Necrons, some Custodes vehicles, some Ultramarines vehicles, some big Tyranid things. I've got some AdMech tanks. I've got
Yeah.
some, guard tanks. I'm going to put loads of anti-tank into my list. And I rock up to my next game and I'm playing against Imperial Knights. The smile on my face, the joy
This is true.
of
This is
knowing that
true.
these guys are going to die so much easier than anything else I could have played.
This is definitely a valid point to make for sure. And I'm not really sure how I'm going to counterpoint that, but but I think in the shootout
Mhm,
they actually fare quite well.
mhm,
They're definitely better than Grey Knights, Sisters, and Drukhari. I think for sure.
mhm.
What about T Suns?
Oh,
No
these.
real changes for them, right? But
Okay,
the
so
meta looks
T's
better for them now than it
the
did
meta looks
previously.
better. Now, I was very upset with the T-Suns changes because I thought they were very meta inappropriate last time.
Sure.
But things have changed here because there are some armies up there that really hate dev wounds and doom
Oh yeah.
bolts.
So a lot of them hate Doombots.
Yeah, doom bolts are not fun for these Custodes, dreadnoughts, and the Necrons.
Yep.
So there is a world where T-Suns find some value here.
Hmm.
The problem is they're still going to lose to armies with melee components or high levels of threat saturation. They just don't have enough stuff on the board to keep up with scoring.
Hmm.
So any of those armies at the top that are more scoring orientated with shooting behind it, I think T-Suns will really struggle to actually win the game against.
Yep.
So and they didn't get any buffs. I don't. They probably it was unlikely they were ever going to get any buffs here, and their detachment's not very good. Um, I
Ooh, I just thought of
think.
something.
Oh,
Wait, I
yeah.
just thought of something. Can you reactive move against a Doombolt?
No,
It's not technically an attack.
no, it's not technically an attack, so you can't use reactive stratagems or anything like that. But it's
I thought that was
no,
a phasing issue.
you can use. Yeah, it depends on the rule.
Okay.
Like
Because that
if a
would be
unit's
really, really good against the Suns if you could reactive move away from their second Doombolt.
uh, no, you can't. You can't.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Someone will correct me, but
Yeah,
I'm pretty
someone
sure
correct us.
it doesn't count as an attack.
So,
Uh, yeah,
T Suns, I mean, definitely gone up in stocks, right? I could see them, I could see them being better than. Oof.
I think they're better than Imperial Knights in sitting in that B tier. You know.
Okay. I
Oh,
think
were
they're
you
definitely
thinking A
better. I
tier?
was going to go a bit higher. Yeah, yeah.
No, I don't think they're an A tier
I
army,
think they're
man.
definitely better than Dark Angels
They've
for
got
sure.
some serious weaknesses in there when you actually put the army on the board.
You don't want to play against Chaos Space Marines, mate. No way. Like,
You get
you rock
squished.
up to your table and your opponent's got 30 possessed, and you're like, oh god, like I'm dead. Very tough. All right, an army that's gotten a huge glow up.
Oh yes.
Orks. Right now, I was convening with Brian in our team chat prior to making this because I'm not the ultimate orc player in the world,
Hmm.
but he said couple of big changes for orcs. One is that the tank buster profile, the kill team profile, which I don't know how
Breaker
these kill
boys.
team things keep
Hmm.
making big splashes in the game, but okay. Um, Basically, what that does is it gives you a unit that can go in a transport that is good anti-vehicle and is at AP3. which is a huge break. Oh, is damage 3, which is a huge break
Damage 3,
point from
AP2.
any other profile that they've previously had available in the army that wasn't a Ghazghkull Thracker, like huge model, big point sink, right? So they've got this like anti-tank unit that can go in trucks now. Then in addition to that, the warging at the start of the command phase means that the whole coin flip of going first or second is completely different now. Orcs are only getting better and better, and I know I was pretty high on them before, and I think I'm still reasonably high on them.
I
I mean,
like that
I
they're
think
doing
Orcs are,
something different, right?
I think Orcs are better than
Everything
GSC,
else.
man. Like, I think you could argue Orcs are better than Guard, personally.
I don't think they go up and above the guard level. All the armies above guard are about the same. It looks like to me they all kind of trying to do the same kind of thing.
Okay,
But I think they do go above GSC now, and
cool.
that's so cool. I'm really happy with that.
I mean, Orcs are pretty good, man. Like, you get a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of bodies on the board with some decent shooting buffs now.
Yep. The new
You've got.
detachment, you can take like flash kits with full rerolls to hit, like
Mhm,
strength 6 damage 1, and then they can like fall back, shoot, and charge. Like, it's pretty
mhm.
nice, man.
Yeah, I really like it. I think Orcs come out of this really well, and they're trying to do something different because they're not going to put a lot of vehicles on the board,
Yeah,
so people's anti-tank is going to be a little bit wasted against them.
I agree.
So they come into this really beautifully. They still have Orky problems in terms of surviving for too long.
Yeah, fair.
They're still phenomenally squishy,
Yeah.
but Dave, you're looking a little green in that light, mate. You know, maybe
I'm
this
feeling
is
it,
it the
man.
time.
Damn,
Is it
dude.
time for a little
It's the time to
war?
call the WAG, man.
That's it. You don't
We'll have
even
to
have to
see.
do it at the start of the battle round. Whenever you want, mate. Any command phase.
We'll have to
Your
see
command
when
phase.
we'll have to see what the guard detachment's like tomorrow.
True.
If there's any hope.
Hmm.
I'm gonna go to Nottingham. I would secretly be really keen to play Hawks. I'm not
It'll
gonna
be
lie.
fun. It'll be
I
really
could borrow
fun.
Brian's army as well. That'd be fun. So we'll have to see what
Yeah,
the guard detachment
I
likes
think
tomorrow.
it lines up really well.
I would love to play Tyranids as well, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Hmm.
Or even Necrons as well, But I don't own 3 Doomsday Arcs or Silent King, so
Hmm.
that's a bit too much modeling commitment for this close out. Space Wolves. It's a tough one.
Do we know
I
anything? I don't really know where they're at the moment.
Neither. I mean, the teams they're always going to have a place with Thunderwolf Cav. Obviously, like that list still exists, right? I don't think Thunderwolf Cavalry got changed at all.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Thunder.
what happened with Thunderwolf, Cav, and Wolfen. Those were the two units that.
Uh, Sorry, I'm just trying to
No
find it
worries. Yeah.
here. Thunderwolf. Okay, Wolfen went up slightly. Nothing else changed, basically. Some Wolf
Hmm.
Scouts went up. I
Yeah.
mean, it's still pretty similar, but you got to think about the meta around them at the same time as well. Like, a lot of these armies have now just straight up access to fallback and shoot. 4 rolls to hit and +1 to wound is very good for the Ultramarines against them as well, right? Like, that was
Hmm.
one of the main things about Thundercav that were really powerful. I mean, surely these Dreadnoughts line up super well against them as well, right? They just get stuck in combat. They're not afraid to charge the Thundercavs, which is their
Hmm.
primary weakness because they don't get +1 damage. And even then, the Talamon Dreadnought with -1 damage. Although, does he still get -1 damage against the? Probably does, right? It's not a half damage ability.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think that they're still a solid army. Like
Okay.
I don't think much has changed here except the meta just getting a little bit more hostile for them.
Are they better than
Um,
Imperial Knights?
I don't think so.
Ah, good man. Internet. I'm working on it. I'm working on converting back to Imperial Knights. Okay, Tau getting hit by the 3-inch deep strike nerf
Oh,
to a build that, by the way, wasn't good in the first place. So I don't know why these people keep getting really high on Ret Cadre, but I don't know what you've been smoking the whole time, but I've never lost to that. Not even close.
yeah. Tiger Shark took a nerf as well on the
True.
points.
Yep.
So
The core carry-on is still there.
I mean, what do they have left? Is that enough left for them
It's
to
just
work with?
carry-on left after that, isn't it?
Hmm.
To be fair, the carry-on didn't take points increases, and the meta going to more tank-orientated
Mhm.
shooting is not going to be good for them at all.
Mhm.
Riptides typically, in my experience, really suffer against anything that's a toughness 9 or better,
Mhm.
especially things that sit on a 2-up save and a 4-up invuln as well, on top of that.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine like a Custodes build, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to put my Dreadnoughts on the point early when you don't have Carrion, and then I'm going to push you as fast as possible,
Mhm.
and you're going to lose a Riptide or a Railhead before your turn 3, and I can tag stuff up. And then once you get to your turn 3, you're either going to be so far behind on points, or I'm going to be in your lines as well, on top of that.
If you want to win a small tournament with Tau, no kidding, I think the best build to go for is the crude
Modka.
build.
Oh,
No,
the crude
crude.
build.
Yeah, I
Really?
think loads of Kroot on the board. That is not a bad build. It can be surprisingly tanky.
Okay.
And I definitely consider it for Tau players. I'm
Okay.
sure Kyle with Pure Type Program is going to talk loads about alternative options, and I'm sure Kroot will come up because I've seen the Kroot hunting pack or whatever it's called actually be pretty nasty to play against.
Okay. Krutok's
Um,
Rampages are a bloody good data sheet for their
Cheap.
points. They're really cheap, and they're doing mortal wounds on the charge. Those things are good,
Yeah,
man.
man.
I,
Get your Kroot out.
I need some of those Krut in my
Perfect.
Imperial Guard, man.
But I personally think they're a pretty bad army at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know, bottom of B tier, top C tier, something like that.
Yeah. I think they're definitely better than Thundercav.
Mhm.
You could. I think they will probably perform better than Knights. I think. Although,
Okay,
is it a
yeah.
question
I
of?
mean, they're cooler than knights, so yeah, nice.
Okay, fair play. Demons got their main best ability completely shut off with the 3-inch deep strike. Although you would still
Mhm.
deep strike outside of 6 anyway with the greater demons, of course. Oof, this meta does not feel good for demons, man.
Oh, you know what? In the Ignite chat, there was a lot of positivity about demons.
Really?
I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm not sold on demons either, mate. I think Ultramarines is a lights out game against for them as well. Like you've got if your opponent has the Eradicated brick, you might as well just go home, mate. Like there's not like Ballistus Dreadnoughts are fantastic against them. Repulsor Executioner, fucking Gilliman, right? Like all these things are
Mhm.
really really good against them. Like Custodes, just Telemons are going to be like you're going to be churning through 2 up, 4 up, get back up. Like all these like Star Shadow Arsenal is going to be
Mhm.
able to like absolutely demolish a demon when it comes down. The Doomsday Arcs have lethal hits, by the way, so the 20-shot lethal hit gun is really good against them. And then like a unit of flayed ones, is 10 flayed ones is going to do an absolute number on a demon if it's on objective. So yeah, I'm not so high on them to be honest right now.
Really interesting. I mean, I would love it if we have any German listeners who about for this
Yes,
army and the next one who could just tell us why they are so good in Germany,
yes,
because we're definitely missing something.
yeah. Nicholas
I
from
think
Germany playing the
Mhm.
Kairos and Lord of Change build. Yeah,
There you go.
has done very
He's
well
doing
with them.
magical
So
things.
maybe that build is still viable because it didn't use 3-inch so much. But yeah, let us
Mhm.
know if you're Nicholas. Reach out. I think they are. Ooh, are they better than Tau? That's a tough one. I've kind of got them like in this B tier region around here. You know,
Yep. Yeah, just under Tau maybe.
under Tau. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to push Knights up too far. Okay, Brotan. Oof. You know, not taking
Okay.
many points changes,
They got a
but
points decrease
okay,
on the
sure.
Thunderkin.
But the
Nice.
AOC nerf is quite big.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be understated that in my experience, Votann relied on chunky AOC units for a huge part of their game plan, in my opinion. Like 2 land forts, like 10 Terminators, you know, basically putting them on 0 ups was, I think, pretty crucial to their game plan. So I'm a little bit worried. And these are targets typically that you had to sink like multiple pieces into to actually kill. And now when you need to do that, your AOC is going to be like absolutely worse, right? Like, are you going to AOC against like how does your thought process go? Are you AOCing against the first shot? Are you AOCing against the second target? Are you going to AOC against the third time they shoot it? Like, how does that go, right?
Just not
Especially if
bothering.
yeah, if you got a castigator, you shoot it. Now you're like +1 AP. Now you're like, oh, should I have AOC the first one or the second one? Like,
Mm.
well, how does it go now, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they're better. Well, having said that, like if the meta is quite vehicle shooting orientated, big units, I could see them being better than Thousand Suns.
Yeah, I think top of B tier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. I'm glad we
that's a
agree on
good
that one
spot. That's where I was looking at it as well.
because they're
Mm.
fundamentally not a bad army, right?
I
They
think
are
they're a
fundamentally
solid army.
yeah.
They've got a good kill team. They've got
Yeah.
the berserks are still brilliant, and I think the
Okay.
linchpin really of everything.
Yep.
Yeah,
Nice.
Votann is solid.
World Eaters.
World Eaters got they didn't get any buffs. They only got like a little nerf on one of their Demon Prince rules.
Dude, I feel World
Um,
Eaters are better than Dark Angels, man.
yeah, but I think they do sit in that B tier. They're a mediocre army.
I don't think World Eaters line up particularly well against any of these top armies. Like Ultramarines seem hard for them.
Hmm.
Custodes with Dreadnought seems not fun at all. And Necrons with -1 damage Silent King seems like I mean, how do you even kill that? Like
I
they
don't
just
know. Well, they have Angron, don't they? It's
okay.
it-
If their Angron charges your Silent King, that can definitely happen, right? Okay. But at the same time, like, how much damage does Angron do to Silent King? Like, he probably kills like 2 minis, right?
No, I think I think you'll find that World Eaters will be good in that matchup.
Really?
I think so.
I
I
mean,
think if World Eaters is going to be good against anything at the top there, it's going to be those Necrons sitting there. Um,
okay,
yeah,
I
oh,
can
look
see
at I
that.
saw that Rice smile. It's
I,
like he's gonna hit a World Eaters player, just put him in the ground.
I think it depends on. I think it depends on how open the objectives are, of course, right?
Mhm,
And kind of the mission as well. I can definitely see that because the speed you can bog them down. You can tag multiple units that can't fall back and shoot everything. Once Doom's out gets tagged. Okay, it really depends on how much melee the Necron build plays though,
mhm,
because like I think like Enigmatic, low heavy destroyers, a unit of Locust destroyers can do a huge number on all these like on
mhm.
all these
Oh yeah.
world eater units
Mhm,
on top as well, right? So I mean, -1 damage Silent King is pretty damn good. He's basically unkillable, and he can just turn around and slap Angron back, like, and then either just fall out of combat and not fall back and shoot, or fall back and shoot maybe Resmania. I don't know. Depends on how much melee counterplay is in there. I think
mm. Yeah, I agree with you there. I think where we put them is a pretty good spot.
Blood Angels. Oof.
Blood
I
Angels
think.
is what's changed.
I mean, they got points nerfed as well.
Ah, did
And the
they?
meta has changed. I think Blood Angels has been a bit of a flop in terms of the release, sadly enough.
They don't get the +1 to wound from Oath.
Yeah, it turns out that Blood Angels is just worse than their original detachment, I think, because the original detachment just straight up hit mega hard.
Mhm,
And actually, in a meta right now, that would be kind of more ideal, perhaps, rather
mhm.
than just speed. So I think Blood Angels are suffering their stocks a little bit right now. I could see Blood Angels being actually. I don't feel like
Spa-
Blood Angels is better than Knights, so that's a weird part.
I don't know if they're better than Space Wolves, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like Knights are a little bit better than Demons.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Sure. That's why I thought that was a bit odd. That one.
Mm.
Yeah. So stuff. It's tough to be a Blood Angels player, and now that you have, like, for example, if a Blood Angels player comes to you and you're like, oh yeah, I'm playing Blood Angels, you'd be like, why are you not just playing Ultramarines with more combat?
Mhm.
You know, it's a tough reason. How are you gonna answer that? Like, +1 to wound is like an enormous buff on your melee unit that you want to go into combat with, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's way better than +2 to strength a lot of the time.
Hmm. Yeah,
Chaos Knights. I think Chaos Knights are better than Imperial Knights.
I think so too. I think that's generally been their trend
Yep,
forever.
yep. The new
Oh.
detachment was pretty solid, I think. Actually,
Mhm,
the damned thing. It'll be interesting to see how they play in teams, whether or not you can play them. They just got like a points decrease again as well.
mhm.
So it just
They
means
did.
like you can field like 14 War Dogs. I mean, I don't, I don't know who
Y
at Games Workshop thinks that. And actually, the new detachment incentivizes not doing this, obviously, which is
mhm.
good. But like 14 War Dogs, how is that good? Like, make some of the massive knights cheaper, right? Like some of the ones that don't even get played, or something like that, right?
It's just an
But
impossible balancing challenge, to be honest.
yeah, I can see that because realistically,
Mm,
some of the big knights are pretty cheap, right? Like the Rampager, super good. I would love it
yeah.
to see a non-points element that incentivized playing big knights with small knights,
Mhm,
because simply tackling that through points clearly doesn't work. So I would love it if, and they've kind of done that with the new detachment, which is good.
mhm,
You do lose Knights of Shade, but you do get a lot of core stratagems there, which are really good on top of
mhm.
that as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if people play the new detachment or not. But I think Chaos Knights. Am I allowed
Just
one
below.
spicy take?
Go for it.
I think Chaos Knights are, you could argue, at the bottom of A tier.
Oh, yeah, go on then. I was going to put them just below Votann,
Okay.
but
I think
this
Chaos Knights are a better army than Votann for sure.
mhm.
And not many good people play against Knights.
They're really really hard to play against if they're played properly. I
Yes,
think.
very frustrating as well.
Mhm.
You're just like, oh, I think you think he's going to come in. No, they just sit back there and then
Yeah, just sit back,
you
score points, force your
yeah.
opponent into you.
Oh, you've only put 8 OC on objective. Yeah, just put one guy on there,
Mhm.
and they don't even charge you or shoot you, and you're just like, damn, it's
Yeah.
frustrating. So with the new points decreases, you can get even more stuff like Nurglings and cultists.
Mhm.
So yeah, there we go. Anything you want to change overall?
Oh, I was looking at. I think everything looks good.
Okay,
I just noticed something really interesting about the A tier top
okay,
6 armies, maybe top 5 armies. I
yeah,
think those armies are all interchangeable. Everything's equal there,
yeah, for sure.
which is really cool.
What? Well, okay, that begs the question. Why don't we put like do we put the rest of the armies in B tier and then drop C to D then?
Oh, I
You see what I'm saying?
see. Yeah, that's not a bad idea,
Okay,
actually.
let's do that because
Oh
oftentimes
gosh,
I
the
find that
screenshot's going to be wild.
oftentimes I find that people just kind of lump everything together in one
Mm.
big, like, massive, like, zone, right? Or they'll just
Yeah,
put everything in one tier, and I'm not really a big fan of that. Like, I'd rather there be a little bit more stratification, really.
yeah.
And that
I
looks a
think
little
this
bit
is
better, I think.
correct.
Yeah.
But you see, this is an interesting one because
Now is
we're now
Votann,
we're tuned to A tier being like, oh, these are really good armies, and actually a
yeah.
lot of these armies are really good. But now we've separated it. But
Mm.
actually, A to C tier are all
Pretty close.
viable armies,
Yeah.
really. But A and B tier are really like your tournament. If you want to try and win a tournament, you run one of those armies. And your
Yes.
S tier, it's just stronger than everything else at the
Yep.
moment.
For sure.
Mm.
So, what are you looking forward to not playing against the most?
Ooh, I don't mind playing against Ultramarines.
Okay.
I don't mind immersing myself in the video game that I enjoyed so much. I'm a gaunt. I've been shot.
Oh,
Beautiful.
mate.
I'll take it. Um, uh, but I'm not looking forward to playing both the Custodes and the Necrons at the moment.
Yes. Fair.
I think I'll find the Custodes trying to deal with the fact that you've got 12-inch moving dreadnoughts that can advance and move through walls and
Mm.
still charge you and shoot you and all this
Yeah.
stuff. I think that's really hard to deal with, especially when they get back up.
Yep.
So it'll be frustrating and swingy to try and
What
survive
a
that game.
dumb mechanic. What a dumb design. Move through wall, advance and charge you, and get back up on the 2 up, 4 up. Oh, sorry.
And the Necrons, I'm not a big fan of the reactive move when they get shot. That means
Uh,
that I have to take units that just one tap things.
yes. Your three
Which,
fire prisms, they all link fire to try and kill it, right?
well, no, because you just reactive move on the first one, don't you?
Oh, I thought they all fire at once. Oh, sorry. I was
No,
used
one
to
at a
the 8th
time.
edition one where they all fire at once.
No, you got to take your 10 Wraith Guard and just blap
Oh.
something.
Oh, man, that sucks,
Uh,
bro. Oh, it's only
so
18-inch range on those guys, isn't it, too?
yeah, that's why I'm in B
Oh,
tier
wow.
now. You see.
Oof.
Uh, what about you, Dave?
I think you're right. You sold me on the Custodes thing. I don't like the sound of that. I'm not looking forward to. I'm not looking forward to playing against Orks, mate. Like,
Oh, you think
it
so?
depends on what the guard detachment is, but mate,
Mm,
once they get in their lines, it's really hard to dig them out. I find. So yeah,
yeah.
but I think Tyranids would give me a really balanced way of playing everything, and
Mhm.
that'd be really interesting. And I think if I was gonna probably go to a tournament and try and win it, I'd probably go with Star Shadow. But I don't know if I have the models to do that as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
I
It's
do
it's.
think. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say it's pretty hard to predict the future because of the way that top players have influence and what they end up playing and stuff
Mm,
like that. So, and that can have a really big impact sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, I think Pariah Nexus has matured now,
Hmm.
and we understand the mission set and what's required to win games.
Yep.
And I really like the transition away from raw power.
Hmm. Okay.
Raw power doesn't win games at the moment, and having a balanced army that plays the mission while still threatens things with a lot of like powerful shooting
Sure.
is
You
is the
really
way
like that.
is the way to do it. I
Okay.
like it. I
All
like the
right.
transition towards
Oh,
that.
cool, man. Yeah. Why have you hated on guard so much then? Because that's literally all that it's done.
Hmm. Interestingly,
Caught him in
though,
a lie, folks.
you see the armies in the S tier.
Sure.
I don't think they play that particular play style as strong as the two factions in the bottom of A tier. And
Yes, sure.
I,
I think Guard and Admech are pretty unique in their ability to play the
I,
game a bit differently. Yeah.
And I think if those two armies were overtuned, which I don't think they are, I think they're just very strong armies now. I think if they're overtuned, it becomes oppressive to play against in a
Okay.
way that you can't handle.
Yeah, because they have the
Because
shooting and the objective play, and
exactly.
it's super hard to break them after that.
But now I'm thinking about how am I going to deal with Necrons and these Ultramarines? I'm going to try and find a position where they can't kill me, but I've dropped their points down. And I can think of loads of ways of doing that with the armies I play. So,
Yeah,
um,
path to victory there.
yeah, exactly. Whereas the guard just felt like there's just nothing you can do with these Aquilons and the mission score. Even if I deal with the Aquilons, how do I deal with the Lehman Russes? And then how do I actually keep up on the scorecard?
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Game's looking in a good state. It's been some interesting revelations.
Mhm.
Tomorrow I'm going to be doing the guard revelation, which will be awesome. We're going to be doing, hopefully, Vic and I are going to be doing a stream game maybe for like the new guard
Mhm.
detachment versus the new Aeldari, or ever how that
Mhm.
pans out or something, right? Or maybe we
Yeah,
could do like an Aeldari Star Shadow or something. Even
yeah.
I guess I'm playing against that, but yeah, we'll figure it out. We
Mhm.
are potentially going to be at Nottingham as well, so that'll be awesome as well.
Yes.
if you're playing the February ITT, I already have a couple of team consulting coaching sessions done for teams, but I've got a couple more slots open if you're going to be going to a team tournament there as well. So yeah, awesome. There we go. If you have forgotten by now, make sure you follow our channel, like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know if you think that we left an army off, because evidently we did.
I hope we've got it this time.
If you think Imperial Knights deserve to be a little bit higher, let us know down in the comments below.
Have you got any plans for members only videos, Dave?
Oh yes, I'm going to be doing the new. I'll be covering all the new guard stuff, for example. I'll probably cover some Tyranid stuff on that as well, and some Necron stuff, and maybe some AdMech stuff as well. So, yeah, I mean, lots of potential here, definitely. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start getting a bit deeper into Eldar as we get closer to the Codex coming out.
Yep.
As you can see from this, I'm pretty excited about Eldar and how they sit in this meta. I think they'll be very rewarding for people who want to try and pick them up again. I think I can do some good content on that, running through some of my ideas on what would be successful. So make sure to keep an eye out for the members side of things if you guys want stuff like that.
Awesome. There we go. This has been episode
64.
64. Although we get that wrong quite often. So whatever episode 64. It is, hopefully you guys have had a good time. Exciting things coming up. As we said, obviously we've got Guard Codex and Aeldari Codex coming up in January. And if you want to check out some of our other member stuff, we've got more and more content coming out there. It's been really awesome. We also have the members Discord where we chat about things like this. Vic checks about Eldar. We're chatting about the Guard stuff. We've got a pretty Aeldari Guard fan base here at the moment. And we've got a small time community where we chat about high level competitive stuff as well. There we go. Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a pleasant, have a good night. It's been nice to get back into it, and have a good one.
Cheers. Peace. Take care. Bye. Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the Fireside.